Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Today on Another View, we continue our Race Let's Talk About It initiative, this time focusing on race and politics. What role does race play in local, regional, state, and national elections? If the laws are for all people, why is race a factor? And why is it more critical than ever for people of color to pay attention to and participate in the political process? We'll have the answers to all these questions and more as Dr. Eric Claville joins me as co-host for the Claville Report. We the People, Race and Politics in America is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Let me begin today's show with a very special thank you to producer Lisa Godley and audio engineer Victor Bowen for keeping things together in my absence. And let me thank you, our listeners. You all have been just incredible with all of the love, the prayers, and condolences in the loss of my dad. My family and I are forever grateful for your kindness. Another View, along with the Virginia Wesleyan College's Center for Religious Studies and the Fort Monroe Authority, have partnered together to provide a safe space to talk about race and racial issues. The initiative is called Race Let's Talk About It, and today is the third in a series of conversations that start here on Another View and then continue in the community during our town halls. Today's topic is called We the People, Race and Politics in America. We're talking about this topic also as a part of the special program we call the Claville Report, Policy, Law, and Politics, and it's the brainchild of Assistant Professor and Director of the Hampton University Pre-Law Institute and my co-host today, Dr. Eric Claville. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me again, Barbara.
Absolutely. And joining us by phone is political analyst Jamal Simmons. Hi, Jamal. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us. And Jasper Hendricks, who is the founder of the Political Action Committee, Brown, Virginia. How you doing, Jasper?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. And yourself?
Thank you. I'm doing just fine. So I want to start this conversation by asking this question. If the premise is that the laws are made for everyone, okay, that's the premise, then why does race matter? Jamal, let me start with you.
I think as you know, and I'm sure most of your listeners know, race matters because it's always mattered in America. The laws weren't always made for everyone. We know that when the country was founded, African Americans were counted as 3/5 of a person. We know that immigration, when it came to immigration laws, immigration was really restricted to whites for most of the country's history, and then they allowed people of African ancestry. But even into the 1920s and 30s, frankly, until the 1960s, did we really open up immigration to people from all sorts of other backgrounds and make it open as it is today? And now people are trying to restrict it again. Mm-hmm. So, the history of America is very tortured when it comes to this question about what does the phrase "all men" mean? And frankly, with women, that wasn't even the case in terms of voting and other rules. Mm-hmm. So I think it's always mattered in America. It will matter for some time. And we've made a lot of progress on a lot of fronts, but we still got a lot of work to do.
And Jasper, from the perspective of the state perspective, why does it matter?
Well, race matters, I believe, because, laws aren't always implemented equally. And as Jamal mentioned, it's really, sort of upon interpretation. And so, and if we're not at the table, when these interpretations are defined and when we're, working to define these things within the Virginia State Code, we're often, left out of the discussion. And so, and then when it becomes time to implementation, there's always a back and forth on what is actually meant. Mm-hmm. And so, we have to continue to be at the table in these discussions and encourage our, elected officials who are there to represent us to make sure they attend these meetings.
Okay.
And when those discussions are being had.
So, Eric, let me ask you, what's more important? Is it who's in the office or is it who's voting in terms of race? Because in the presidential election back in 2008, when President Obama was elected, I mean, droves of people came out and voted because they wanted to be a part of that historical moment. But I'm not so sure, and people aren't so sure that they are going to be as dedicated this time.
Sure. And Barbara, you asked a very good question because a lot of individuals are just really not into politics because of the way American politics is, or simply by not knowing. So my answer to that question is going to be the typical lawyer answer. It all depends, right? Okay, so what does it depend upon? It depends upon who's going to pass legislation for your interests, okay? It really doesn't matter who's in office as long as they're representing your interests. Okay, but in order to get those individuals in office to represent your interests, then you have to vote in order to get those individuals elected. So you have the influence, you have the influence of the politics, okay? The influence are, of course, money, okay? Secondly, the influence is connections, favors and things of that nature. But really the major, and I tell everyone, we live in a country where we have what we call one man, one vote. And elected officials, I tell the elected officials that I consult with, the first rule is to get you elected. The second rule is stay elected. The third rule is to get you reelected. Without being elected, you're simply an unelected elected official, and we just wave at you at the fundraisers, and nobody talks to you because you can't get things passed.
So I'm just as torn about asking this question and talking about this as I can be, because I noticed, with last night's Republican debates, that Mr. Trump got as much or more coverage than the actual debate, and here I am bringing him up again. But I bring him up for this reason, because my question to you all is, if Trump supporters, which are described, at least from an article in the Washington Post, that they tend to be uncomfortable with the changes that have been afoot in the country. They were uneasy with social revolutions of the 60s, dismayed by black protests. I mean, in other words, they're not very happy about the browning of America. So in that context, Jamal, is it more important than ever for us to make sure that we actually do go to the polls?
It's definitely important for people to go to the polls, but that means that it's important for the opponents of Trump, or the Democrats in particular. I'm going to call it out. I'm a Democrat. It's important for the Democrats to give people something to vote for. And I hear far too often from my Democratic strategist friends that once Donald Trump or Marco Rubio or Cruz or one of these guys shows up in the general election, that will animate Democratic voters to get up and vote. That's not how Democrats vote. Democrats are lovers. It doesn't matter how many times we have our hearts broken, we still want to fall in love again. And so we are constantly looking for someone who is going to offer us something that we want. And if you offer us something that we want, then we'll show up to get that. But if we're just looking to scare us, that's not really going to work. And the last thing I'll say is we can't separate economics from this, because race and economics have also been intertwined since the founding of the country. And I think what you're seeing right now among these Trump voters, the angry populist whites that are out there, is they have also had 30 years of wage stagnation where people's incomes haven't risen. And the only reason we had family incomes rise for so long was because more women went into the workforce, so you had two-income families. But the single-income earner did not earn more money. And so you have these men who had jobs that in the deindustrialization of America are starting to disappear. And now they're looking around, and women are becoming supervisors at work, and black people get to be president, and Latinos get to come into the country. And with all this change, at least I used to be white, and being white mattered. And so they think that they have lost economic power. They feel they've lost economic power. They look around, they feel they've lost social status because of all this browning of America, and they fear for themselves and for their children about what kind of opportunities they're going to get. That's the most sympathetic view. I don't really have a lot of sympathy for it because of history, but I do think we've got to understand where they're coming from, and so that we can diagnose it and figure out how to combat it.
Eric?
But Jamal, isn't that really a byproduct of the miseducation of white America as it relates to race? And I also want to piggyback on the economics piece as well. What politics is about, who gets what, when, where, and how. And if you look at who has gotten what and who's gotten it when and who's gotten it how, it's typically been one particular part of the racial spectrum of America, right?
Right, but what you haven't seen in the past is usually when we have social progress, we get social progress at a time of economic expansion. And now we've got social progress happening at a time of economic stagnation, maybe contraction. And so that is making it even more combustible than usual. That's my point.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call if you'd like to join our conversation. We're talking about race and politics as part of our Race Let's Talk About It initiative. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Eric, you want to bring Jasper into the conversation?
Yeah, Jasper, you actually made a very good point in the very beginning. You talked about having a seat at the table or being there, knowing what's going on. You know, there's this cartoon we used to watch. It was called G.I. Joe, and at the end it'll say, "Knowing is half the battle." Right. So in politics, how true is that, and how do we get a seat at the table?
Well, I mean, it's very true. I mean, it's very important that we do go out and vote, but it's also very important that we hold our elected officials accountable and that we're there, not just for them to attend the meeting, but for us to show up, and express our views. And so, on Dr. King Day, we decided to pull together, a diverse group of organizations and have a day of advocacy at the state capitol. We wanted to change the face. Those typically are the people who would support Donald Trump are there at the Virginia Capitol on Dr. King Day, advocating for policies that are completely against what Dr. King would stand for. And so, but we decided that, in order, we had to first teach our folks how to advocate. And so we had, roughly over 150 people, showed up, and we took them through and connected them and showed them the connections between your elected officials to your appointed officials, how to discuss things with your legislators. And at the very end of the day, people said, well, people have always told us we need to go talk to our elected officials, but until today, no one has ever showed us how.
Wow.
And since then, those same 150 people, 50-plus people, have been writing their legislators. And so this week we've seen Ban the Box come out of the state Senate. They wrote in letters to all the committee folks, to get it through committee. And then they wrote the letters to senators and said, hey, we need you to vote for that. And, and then just yesterday we saw that that the felony threshold, the larceny threshold, came out of the state Senate, the increase from, 2 to 500. It wasn't the 1,500 that that many organizations were seeking, but we were able to put pressure on our state Senate to say, let's start with something. Let's move the needle. This hasn't been changed since 1980. So we feel that, we didn't get the 1,500, but we were able to get them to vote on lifting it to 500. And then we can come back later. So, folks, we have to create this type of activism, but in order to do that, we have to teach, and so, and that's what we have provided to do, trying to do.
And speaking of teaching, can you explain a little bit more about that larceny bill?
Sure. So basically what happens is that if you take something or what is called stealing or theft, then if it's valued at $200, it's known as a felony. So by raising that threshold, what ends up happening is that now it's a higher threshold for it to be deemed a felony, being charged with it and possibly convicted of it. What does a felony do to your record as opposed to a misdemeanor? It cuts off a lot of opportunities for you, and it makes it much harder for you to achieve various things in life for a mistake that you made.
I want to, and Jamal, I know you have to leave us at about 12:30, but I want to ask you this question as we're talking about how critical it is in terms of education. So how do you weed through, especially if you were not a political junkie, if you will, how do you weed through all of the noise to really figure out where people are coming from in terms of those who are asking for our votes?
You mean the candidate?
Yeah, the candidates. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think most of them are they're advocating pretty broad things, but there's some clues out there, right? I mean, there was a big dust up last week about Bernie Sanders, who put this ad up about people looking for America, very soft and gauzy with Simon Garfunkel music and all that, but there weren't really any black people in it. And so it's hard to, and I think Bernie has a message that can appeal to a lot of African American voters. But if you don't see yourself in the picture, if you're talking about an America and you don't have people who reflect the America that we currently live in that picture, it's hard for me to see myself in your vision. So I think the first thing we have to look at is, do these people see us, people in my community, in their vision? And then I think we got to dig into the policies and let's see how they really boil out. And nobody's going to be 100%, but I think we got to make some real rational adult judgments about, I need to get these 3 or 4 things done in my life. Is anybody talking about those 3 or 4 things? And if they're not talking about those 3 or 4 things, in the era of social media and the internet and Facebook friends and all the stuff, like, go out there and tell people what it is you want these people to address.
440.
And I'll tell you this, let's not wait for them to come up with it. I think this is the challenge. We have got to put the agenda forward. And it's one of the things about the Black Lives Matter movement that I think has been incredibly effective is 5 years ago, if you asked 10 black people what they thought the most important issues were to address for Black America, you get 10 different answers. And now I think one of those answers that if you ask 10 African American applicants what they thought, criminal justice would be at the top 1, 2, or 3 for any person that comes up. And now you're seeing politicians try to come up with a criminal justice agenda. So that's what happens when you get some unity around the ask. You get people to address it.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Lance joins us from Portsmouth. Hi, Lance. You're on the air.
Hi. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. You guys, great discussion, and you've opened a huge can of worms. But I just wanted to say, I agree with the thesis that justice is not blind for everyone, but it is applied, I believe, evenly. I'm an African American. I was born in the 70s. I just want to respectfully disagree. I think the term race is disingenuous. We are a different ethnic group. We make up 12 to 14% of the national population. Irish went through it in the early 1900s. They weren't allowed a voice. Jews weren't allowed to even join the military until World War II. They weren't considered white. Martin Luther King and everything we did during the movement of the 60s is because we made it happen and we took control and power for ourselves. As an African American nation, our group of ethnic people, we have not formed a national identity, and we haven't empowered each other and taken what we need. We shouldn't have to ask anyone for anything. We should be putting up our own candidates in the state assembly and in the Senate and put up people we think will represent us. And that's what we have to do. It's not about changing laws to change larceny. We should be empowering each other to help raise each other's children so they don't get into a position where they feel like they have to steal anything. And that the laws can't be applied to them because we don't put ourselves in those positions.
Okay.
And that's what I feel.
Okay, Lance, thanks so much for your call. Jasper, you want to respond?
Yeah, so, and the larceny legislation was just a piece of it. This week we tried to get the minimum wage increase. Right? We feel that if we increase the minimum wage, we can take people off of, we can reduce the number of people that are dependent on state services. That went down. They wouldn't even take a vote on it. And so we're working on several pieces of some other bills to help empower people, like the earned income tax credit. But those have it's going to be hard to get them through our Republican-dominated legislature. It's almost 2-1. And in working with candidates, we're constantly working with candidates and trying to identify candidates. But we also need black people to donate to candidates. We lost a seat in Northern Virginia. The guy lost by 127 votes. He worked his heart out. He was Joshua King, and he was running in Prince William County. He lost by 127 votes. How many African Americans gave to his campaign? And just imagine if we would have just had a couple people to donate to his campaign, he could have been able to do some extra things to make up that 127 votes.
Okay.
And so when you look at, running for office and running candidates, we also have to look at financing those candidates. They have to buy media, they have to pay staff, they have to, there's different things. So
so we have to participate in the entire process as opposed to just bits and pieces of it. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry. I would just say, I'll put a conservative here for a second.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which is, if you've got a conservative legislature in Virginia, it's going to be tough. I think it's important to push minimum wage. It's important to push earned income tax credit. But maybe we could also push for some things that would help some African-American entrepreneurs start businesses so that when they start their businesses in communities, they end up hiring more black people, and then we won't necessarily need as many government services for those people as possible. That doesn't mean we neglect the other stuff, but in the era of conservative government, maybe there's some places where you can find common cause with the conservatives that would actually benefit the black community.
Okay, Eric, go ahead.
Sure. And listen, I agree with what Jasper and Jamal is saying. Also want to educate the caller and everyone else about the assumption that African Americans just aren't doing enough. When you look at the existence of African Americans in English America since 1619, our existence from 1619 to 1865 was that of slavery. Okay, that's working and not getting paid for anything. That's 250 years. You look at the next 100 years from 1865 to 1965, or really 1964, you're looking at oppression through Jim Crow and segregation. That's opportunities that you're not allowed to have through public policy and laws that's restricting it, such as redlining and the like. So now you look at a little bit over 50 years where African Americans just now have the law on their side to help them to attain these opportunities that all others have had the opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm. There's also the concept of what we call the whitening of the American citizen. Well, what I call it is that when you have immigrants that come in from other countries, they become more white over various generations, so therefore they can blend in. So a person who is Jewish can actually pass for being a white American, even though they are Jewish and may have a Jewish last name, Irish, and the like. And finally, I want to give this realistic picture of economics. It's all about economics. All about economics. It's about education as well. In 2012, in the state of Virginia spent $9 billion of taxpayer money over 4 years on contracts and procurement. Of that, $8.7 billion went to companies owned by white males only. $300 million went to what we call minorities, which includes
women,
blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and white women. Okay? All right. So $8.7 billion compared to $300 million. And that's just in 2012. The disparity has gone down slightly, maybe 1%, but the education part and the procurement disparity is there. It is there.
I want to get to a phone call because, Jamal, I think this person wants to respond to something that you said. Randy joins us from Portsmouth. Hi, Randy. You're on the air.
Hi, Jamal. Hi. I appreciate your conversation. The thing that I wanted to say was that the characterization of anybody being a Trump supporter, or in general, Trump supporters are angry, or that white males have some issues with women and people of color becoming empowered and in the workforce, and that they are everybody's equal. I really think it propagates a bad stereotype. I think it's very far off the mark. When I hear Trump supporters, it has nothing to do with liking Trump. It has everything to do with who can beat Hillary. So I don't see it that way. I think it's important to at least have the conversation that it be something broader than a simple angry white man stereotype. I think that that's a false narrative. The more time that passes, I believe that narrative becomes more and more false. And I would like to see folks address something more complex than just a simple you're angry because you're no longer as powerful as you once were.
Randy, it's interesting you bring up that point. I'm going to let Jamal respond to you. But the quotes that I read you from the Washington Post, just so you know, are written by white journalists. And these are based on polls. So someone has that perception out there. But Jamal, what's your question? What's your answer, rather?
I'm sure not everybody who supports Donald Trump feels that way, right? So I'm sure there, let's say 20% of the people who support Donald Trump don't feel that way. So that may be true. But I think if you take a look at the trajectory, right, starting with the Tea Party, going through the way people reacted to President Obama, going through the vitriol, and let's not forget, David Duke just endorsed Donald Trump, right? He's being endorsed by white supremacists, avowed white supremacists, who are really frank about what it is they believe. So I think when you look at there is a part of the Republican establishment that is angry, and they are it is almost as if they have been throwing a political temper tantrum because nobody in Washington will stand up to the changing of America that they're witnessing, and they just wanted to stop. And you can't really do business with people who are against your existence as an equal part of the society.
Okay. Jamal, we know you have to leave us. We really appreciate you being with us today. Yes. And hopefully we can get you back again when you can spend the hour with us.
I'm happy to be here, and in fact, I think I just sent Lisa a note. If you want me to stick around, I got a while
Excellent.
left.
Okay, well then that's fantastic. If you're just joining us, we're talking about race and politics in America with Dr. Eric Claville of Hampton University, Jasper Hendricks, founder of the PAC Brown, Virginia, and Jamal Simmons, who is a political consultant with the Rabin Group. Let's see. Go ahead, Eric.
If I can, Barbara, I would like to respond to the caller.
Okay.
And this is really one, you kind of hear this when individuals want to kind of have a flowery view of crisis in America, especially when it deals with race. But the state of hate, this is an article that came out from the Leadership Conference, which is a national premier civil and human rights coalition. But basically shows in 2008, it showed that since 2000 to 2008, the increase in white supremacist hate groups went up 54%. Okay, that's the single largest increase, all right, since the after the Civil War, all right, and that was after President Obama was elected. Okay, so what you're finding is a lot of people are inflamed by the election of President Obama, a black man, holding the largest office, the most powerful office in the world, and they see their country. Again, you're getting this Goldwater, this racial political talk again, their country being taken over. When they say, we need our
country back.
Right. We need to take our country back. From where? Where has it gone? Our country is going down. Where? How? Tell me. So again, if you look at the numbers, if you really stand back, and also listen, as a licensed lawyer, I practice employment law, employment discrimination. I get so many calls about individuals who are under attack on their jobs with a lot of overt and in-your-face comments about, now your black president is doing this and so forth and so on. And individuals just don't feel comfortable where now the policy in a lot of places is don't talk about politics at all.
Okay, our phones are lit up, as I thought they would be. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Marvin joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Marvin.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay.
That's good. I just wanted to comment on a statement about Donald Trump and his followers being afraid. But when that statement was made, it made me think about the 2008 election. Because if you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, these people was praising Donald Trump. That whole party was. They even got together and made a pact that they wasn't going to do anything to help this man once he took office. So if these people are afraid of what are afraid of America getting browner, what do that say about the whole Republican Party when you go back before it was time for this election? Because now they know this man can't win again. There's no election for him again. Now it's like they want America to forget everything they did, everything they said, about this man and how they did things to him. I mean, the word compromise was a bad word.
Okay. All right, Marvin.
5 years ago.
Thanks so much for your call. Let's let Jamal answer you. Go ahead, Jamal, and then we'll hear from Jasper.
Now that I'm getting older, in my 40s, I can have a little bit more perspective. And one of the things that I think I see, and most people probably realize, is things have unintended consequences, right? And so now what you have, and I have friends who said this to me who have little kids. You have little kids who their entire lives, black and white kids, who live their entire lives with a black president. Yeah. So the expectation about what black people get to do is very different for somebody who's 13 and younger, right, than it is for the rest of us. And what that means for the rest, they can't take that back, right? The conservatives want to do something, but they can't take that experience back. And so now I think, not that we have to be patient and let things play out, but I do think we will see the fruit of these seeds that have been planted over the next 20 or 30 or 50 years that even the conservatives can't change.
Jasper, you want to respond also?
Well, I don't want to talk about Donald Trump. But,
why not? Everyone else is.
All right. I don't want to give him any more airtime than he deserves. I mean, he's just, I really don't think that he has I really don't think he plans on winning the presidential election. He's doing just what he wants to do, which is to have everybody talk about him so he can increase his earnings. But I will talk with Eric, about the small business. You gave the statistics about the small business, the procurement. One of the things that we have to do in Virginia is change the definition of a small business.
Yes.
And what it means to be a small business in Virginia. Right now, under the current definition, 98% of the businesses that are in Virginia are small businesses. And to be a small business in Virginia, you have to have one of two things: 250 or fewer employees, or make less than $10 million a year. And so it's not even to the standard of what the federal government says. The federal government says you have to have both. Virginia is one or the other. Okay. And so that actually keeps a lot of minority and small businesses, small businesses out of the equation because they're competing. You may make $1 million a year, but you're competing against someone who makes 10, or 20. As long as $20 million, as long as they have less than 250 employees. So that's the first step. And there is a piece of legislation. The House did pass it last year, but then they reneged on it and then called for a committee to look into it. And now it's back up again. In the state legislature, and they just slid it in subcommittee, and that's where bills go to die, is in subcommittee, because then they don't have to take a recorded vote.
Sure.
So we have to, in order to create this opportunity, we have to begin to address issues like that.
John joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, John. You're on the air.
Hi. How are you guys today?
Okay. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Something I wanted to hit on was the Black Lives Matter movement. Over the years of growing up, I've noticed race has become a bigger issue, more and more so. Black Lives Matter, great. The problem is we're segregating to single race. All lives should matter. Too much of the time you see different races spouting about everything else and whatnot. In the Marine Corps, when I look to my brothers to the left and right of me, I don't see color. I see one individual person who I know indefinitely will have my back regardless of my skin color. In America, we need to start looking for that ideal in everyone. We have too much suffering going on right now, hate, killing every day. You see nothing good on the news. And one of the issues that are always brought up is race right now, and it's causing a lot of conflict in America, and it's saddening.
Okay, John, let's let our panelists respond to you. Thanks so much for your call. Eric.
Well, first of all, John, thank you for your call. Thanks for your service. And listen, as a veteran myself, I understand the concept of your brother to the right, to your left, that have your side, and all those that have your back. However, you mentioned something that is that a lot of Black Americans are saying is matter to us all the time. And you said very recently race has started to matter. Race has always mattered. especially for white Americans and black Americans. Again, I talk about the first 250 years of existence of 40 million people on this continent, in English America, that were subjected to slavery and inhumane and demonic treatment and behavior by another group. Another 100 years of being oppressed through segregation and Jim Crow laws, okay? And then now you have 50 years of being able to actually work towards something. Race has always mattered in this country, okay? If you go back to your Constitution and read it, it will tell you. It sections individuals out by race. And that's the first assignment that every class I've ever taught on the law school level or an undergraduate level, that's the first assignment all students have, is to read the Constitution. And then you will see how all laws and public policy dictate who gets what in politics, okay?
Jasper, let me ask you.
The other part of that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The other part of that is if you, that's like arguing, not saying that you shouldn't say Black Lives Matter. It's like arguing that you shouldn't have a dentist versus a doctor, right? Like, of course, but if you have a toothache, then you need to go see a dentist to focus on your teeth. I mean, we know health matters, but we know, like, if you have an actual problem in a part of your body, we should focus on that problem. So the issue isn't that all lives matter. All lives certainly do matter. But when we see a disproportionate number of Black lives being taken by the state, without those people who are taking those lives being punished for those killings, then we've got to focus on that acute problem that the society is facing.
Okay. Jasper, I want to ask you, tell us about Brown, Virginia, and exactly what it is.
So Brown, Virginia started, I created it a couple of years ago because, I actually got my start in politics through the NAACP and served in leadership positions in Virginia. But since then, I've traveled around the country and done a lot of work around the country. But when I often look back at my home state, I see the organizations that I once was part of are now going through leadership challenges. And so while they're going through those leadership challenges, the work still needs to be done. And so what we are is a convening of traditional African-American organizations, but also other, organizations, civic engagement organizations that want to focus on work within the African-American and Brown communities. So we bring them together to work with them on technical assistance, coalition building, and we focus on some of the issues like educating on voter ID, the new voter ID laws, but also with teaching advocacy now. And so we work with the NAACP, SALT, which is Social Action Linking Together, which is an organization out of the Catholic Church, the Baptist General Convention, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and a few other groups. And so that's what we did. It's just trying to fill the void as our traditional organization, sort of get their act together, so to speak, and rebuild.
Okay.
And so, it's been a lot of work in getting it going, bringing everyone to the table. But I think with King Day, and we're going to have another follow-up day at the state capitol on February 15th, where we're going to actually go and meet with legislators on some of these, issues that make it out of the House, because it's right before a crossover.
And we'll talk a little bit later about how people can get involved with that. But I want to get to some of these calls because our lines are tied up. Catherine from Virginia Beach joins us. Hi, Catherine. You're on the air.
Yes, thank you so much, Barbara.
You're welcome.
I'm so honored to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you.
I wanted to lend my support to the panelists. I'm a white person here in America, and I can see that racism is so prevalent, and I'm so saddened by that and frustrated by it, and I want to help. I wanted to bring up this one point in that the Oregon standoff, I just feel so strongly that if those men were African-American or colored, armed on federal lands, this would have played out very differently. I feel very strongly that these men were treated differently because they were Caucasian, and yet they were still armed. I would love the panel to speak to that and to the gun violence that takes place in African-American communities that is so much higher than Caucasian communities. And I want to lend my support to whatever the panelists think that I, as a citizen, can do.
Okay, Catherine, thank you so much for that call. Jamal, why don't you start? She wants to know what you think about in terms of the standoff, and if it had been people of color, would it have been a different outcome?
Well, somebody reminded me recently that California has a what do you call it? One of the weapons. They had a weapons ban, assault weapons ban in California because the Black Panthers took weapons into the state capitol because it was legal back in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. And so we know what will happen if Black people did this. The laws will change. People would focus. This is not about whether or not African Americans African Americans don't have that same. The threat of African Americans is perceived so much greater. There are a lot of things you could say about that. I wanted to get to the point that the caller made about what she can do.
Yes, go ahead.
And I feel the same way it's incumbent upon men to combat sexism when women aren't around, it's incumbent upon white people to combat racism when people of color aren't around. And there are all kinds of subtle things that get said, subtle things that get done that frankly, it's going to take some policing inside white community to make, and some conversations that are had that are really frank, maybe when people of color aren't around and people feel more safe, so that we can get to a place where we can really flesh out some of these problems that we've had the last couple hundred years.
Okay, let's go to Eric in Suffolk. Hi, Eric, you're on the air.
Hello, Barbara.
Hi.
I just have a question that I would like an answer to if somebody knows there. I understand and am personally affected by the larceny situation that we have in Virginia. And I see the laws, but then another gentleman brought up the history in this country of 350 years, slavery and oppression. And I'm just wondering, has there been in history a time where people have been enslaved and held captive in a land that wasn't theirs, that they didn't need to come out of it at some point? So long term, it might be hard for us to come to grips with, but do we need options outside of this country is my question.
Okay, let's let the panelists answer. Who wants to take it on first?
Well,
Eric,
where do we go?
Right. I know, exactly.
Right, well, I'll answer that question through history. If you look at the Marcus Garvey movement in Liberia was a country that was set up on the continent of Africa after colonialism, okay, which is very important to make that distinction because the geographical political lines that are drawn, which are known as countries within the continent of Africa, were created after colonialism, okay? So that was a country created for individuals who were freed slaves that wanted to go back to their home country or homelands. However, I argue two things. Number one, I believe that the race problem can be solved one way. We don't need another Dr. Martin Luther King. He was phenomenal. He did it. We don't need another Medgar Evers. We don't need another Rosa Parks. But what we need is white males with white privilege to pass meaningful public policy and laws that allow individuals that have been historically disadvantaged in this country to finally take advantage of what this country has. In the words of the Constitution, we the people, in order to secure tranquility, the blessings of liberty for our posterity, okay? The second thing that we need and here's the reason why I say that, because African Americans are the only people in the history of mankind, documented history, that have been oppressed, belittled, killed, demeaned, demonized, and the like, but still have said to their oppressors in the world, we want to be a part of this country because we are the ones that helped to build it and then get paid for it. We love you. They wanted to kill Dr. King. They wanted to kill his family, but he said, we love you. We want to work with you. So I think that that's a powerful statement within itself. And I think when individuals realize that, we'll be a better country for it.
Okay. Anyone else want to respond to that? Go ahead.
Well, I'll say,
Jamal?
I've been doing a lot of family genealogy research. Our family goes back on one side to Virginia and the other side to Georgia and Alabama. And we've gotten back to 1818 and the 1830s, right? And those people were slaves. And I just have to tell you, I'm not willing to walk away from 250, 300 years worth of labor and sweat and equity that our people have put into this country and leave it to other people.
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, I'm invested. I'm not going anywhere. So we have to figure this out.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to get one more call in before we're out of time. Jamal joins us from Virginia Beach. Quick question, Jamal.
Yeah, and just not a quick question, more of a comment, but thank you for having me on, Barbara.
Sure.
Hello, Eric,
Hey,
Jasper, and Jamal. But my comment was actually also something Jasper said earlier. In my experience, I've worked with members of Congress. I've also worked on more than several campaigns over the last decade. But I do want to reiterate how much power that individuals have in influencing elections and how much power individuals have in influencing the actions of elected officials. We don't realize that, and we have to exercise that power. Elected officials, they do listen to us. We may not think they are, but they do. It's their responsibility to listen to us.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And as far as elections go, we have to take more of an active part. Just like Jasper said, giving money, but also being more active in running the elections and moving the elections and moving the electorate, and also being the persons who are putting forth the opinion and the trajectory of what the elections are about.
Okay. Thank you so much for that call. I think we just lost him, unfortunately. But Jasper, you want to respond to him?
Yes, no, he makes some very valid points, and that's why I created two organizations. One is actually a PAC, which it's the Broader Representation Advocacy Team, but you can find it online at BRAT-PAC.com, because I educate people on who's running for office, work with African American candidates who want to run for office for the first time, or they want to move from one position, like a board of supervisors, to a state senate. Connect them with resources, help raise money for their campaigns. We don't get any money. The money goes directly to the candidates. We show you how to give to them, how to find their website.
Okay.
And then Brown, Virginia is for those who want to work on voter registration, want to help educate people, have town hall meetings. We're about to announce a series of town hall meetings where we're going to go to different communities and talk about the issue.
Okay.
And hopefully teach people.
I was going to say, tell us where they can find Brown, Virginia very quickly, because we're just about out of time.
Brown, VA, BROWNVA.org.
Okay, great. That's Jasper Hendricks, the founder of the Political Action Committee, Brown, Virginia. Thank you so much, Jasper, for joining us. Jamal, one last comment, about 30 seconds.
Oh, I think this is a fantastic program. Thank you for having me on, and I think we got a lot of work to do this year, but hold these candidates accountable. Don't get your vote out for free.
Okay, fantastic. Jamal Simmons, he is a political consultant and analyst, and he's with the Rabin Group in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us. Eric, we got a minute and a half for you to wrap it up.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my two friends and colleagues, Jasper and Jamal. Thank you so much. You guys are doing phenomenal things in your various areas, and we wish you nothing but success. I'd like to thank the callers for calling in. They always provide a lot of insight in this area, and Barbara, thank you as well. I would like to say that, again, we live in a country, I believe the greatest country at this particular time in man's history. And one of the greatest aspects of politics is that no matter what happens, no matter what Donald Trump says, no matter what money is spent, we still have one man, one vote. If you get out there and you vote your heart, vote your convictions for the betterment of not only yourself, but your community, your area, and this country, then we can truly make a change. Again, by holding our elected officials accountable, by being educated, and by going to groups such as Jasper's and others to educate and listening to shows like this. But that's how we can do it.
Fantastic. Eric will be back with the Claville Report again in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And we'll also see you next Thursday at the Town Hall as one of our great panelists. So thank you very, very much. And we will be right back.
Hi, this is Essie Patha-Murkerson from Law and Order. You are listening to Another View at 89.5 WHRV.
Aw, Victor did that for me because he knows that's one of my favorites. Thank you, Victor. Next week, the nation will get to experience a piece of history when Williamsburg's First Baptist Church invites all to ring a bell that has remained silent for decades. The historic church is one of the oldest in the nation, founded by a group of enslaved men and women in 1776. Members acquired the bell in the late 19th century, but it remained silent during the Civil Rights Movement. Now, a group of experts from Colonial Williamsburg have restored this important part of the church's rich history, and the bell is ready to ring once more. Reverend Reginald Davis explains why the ringing of the bell is so important.
The nation is about to explode, about all the police brutality, the distrust, and so we feel like the nation is on the wrong track. We are not pushing for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We are divided politically, religiously, economically, educationally. And so the injustice and the inequality that has gone on for years is really apparent now. And the next generation needs to know that there is hope. The church has to be at the forefront of the transformation of our nation. And so we want people to know that the bell signifies freedom, unfinished business of freedom. And we cannot live in a nation, as the great President Abraham Lincoln said, half slaves, half free. Those who are 1% holding 90% of the wealth, that's no freedom in that. And so we have to remind the nation that we are one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
The First Baptist Church and Colonial Williamsburg will kick off the month-long celebration on February 1st when a who's who of guests, including Danny Glover, Dionne Warwick, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson, will be on hand for the celebration. Now, while many have reserved time to ring the bell on the First Baptist Church and Colonial Williamsburg invite everyone in the nation to ring the bell throughout the day, every day, for Black History Month. And you can go to letfreedomringchallenge.org in order to sign up to ring the bell. You can either come ring it in person or you can ring it virtually. So that's letfreedomringchallenge.org. I want to tell you about two other events that you may be very interested in. Next Tuesday, I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the MC for the President's Lecture Series at Old Dominion University. Alicia Garza, who is the co-founder of #BlackLivesMatter, will be here. Now, this is Tuesday, February the 2nd at 7:30 p.m. at the Ted Constant Convocation Center here in Norfolk. Tickets are free, but you must have a ticket in order to get in. If you want more information, you can go to odu.edu and find out on their page where you can get tickets. You can get tickets also at whynottix.com or the web information desk over at ODU. And again, tickets are free, but you need them in order to enter. That's Alicia Garza, co-founder of #BlackLivesMatter. And this Sunday is the last day for you to sign up for health care for this year without being charged a penalty through your taxes. So Celebrate Healthcare is doing two events. One is today from 2 until 6 p.m. and then one on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Hampton Roads Convention Center in Coliseum Drive in Hampton. And there are people there who will help you to be able to sign up and participate. And also our town hall, our next town hall is Thursday, February the 4th. And we hope that you will join us. It's at the Fort Monroe Theater, 42 Tidball Road in Hampton. It is also free. Everybody's invited, but please go to whro.org/talkaboutrace and sign up. So come on out, join us for the next town hall. We'll continue the conversation on race and politics. Next week on Another View, a candid conversation with the new superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools, Dr. Melinda Boone. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Jordan Yowell answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Make it a fantastic weekend, everyone, and I'll see you next week on Another View.